Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Sunday, December 8th, and no, Juan Soto has not signed yet. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, how is your thumbs doing from scrolling Twitter in anticipation of Juan Soto finally making a decision?
Yes, my F5 key on my keyboard is no more at this stage as we continue to await the largest free agent contract, presumably, in Major League Baseball history. Nothing yet on Juan Soto other than a few pictures of him hanging out with Scott Boras and company, looking very anxious about the dessert menu at his favorite restaurant or something like that. Anyways, yes, Juan Soto still has not signed. Still no word on if he will be a Blue Jay, although whispers continue to emerge that the Blue Jays are very much in the mix, but nothing concrete as far as that goes.
Maybe if you're listening, he has signed by now, but as of recording is not. So we are going to discuss it a little bit. Jordan, you mentioned that picture with Scott Boras and what I can only presume are some Boras Court people. But do you think that Scott Boras is a good hang? Like, you think that Juan Soto is enjoying his time hanging out with Scott Boras?
I'm pretty torn here just on the based on his interactions with the media, and I know that that's a totally different can of worms. But when he'll be at the GM meetings and he'll be talking about how people are looking for the Snelling salts and stuff. This guy just screams like old like boomer that just learned how to use Facebook. So as far as a hang goes, if you're looking to hang out with like your dad, maybe, I'm not sure if I'd really want to go for like beers with him.
I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment. I'm sure that their conversations when they're together are pretty strictly professional. I would imagine there's
I
not a
would
lot of
suspect.
I don't think that they're probably hitting the town together. But you never know. You never know. Scott Boras could be the coolest dude in the world to go get beers with, and I'm sure he's got some great stories for sure.
Yeah, he's not short on connections, I imagine. So maybe he can hook you up somewhere.
All right, let's get into this because Juan Soto obviously Jeff Passan reported that he was going to sign before the start of the winter meetings, which officially get underway on Monday, even though most of the baseball world is either already in Dallas or is currently on their way to Dallas. And of course, when they get there, that I think kind of signals the start of the winter meetings as people arrive and check in, and obviously conversations start to flow. But yeah, Juan Soto expected to sign, I guess, by today is kind of what the vibe is, and maybe it strings into tomorrow when they have a big announcement or whatever, however they want to go about it. But are you kind of surprised that we're sitting here right now not knowing where Juan Soto is going?
No, not at all. Not even slightly surprised. I feel like this is always kind of the case, right? It's obviously been a lot more transparent and there's been a lot more leaks than, last year. But even, the Otani saga and everything with that also dragged on and on and on. I mean, this is an astronomical amount of money. It's an astronomical number of years. It's a major decision for Juan Soto, and it's a major commitment for every team that's involved, right? So it's no surprise, at least to me, that it's taking so long to come to a conclusion. But it does seem like we are reaching the finish line, or at least it's in sight. And I wouldn't be shocked if it came maybe on day one, maybe on Tuesday, even. Like, it's going to probably happen this week. It seems like it's lined up to do so. And it's not really clear exactly how that's going to shake down. There's word that the Mets maybe have the biggest offer. There was some whispers that the Blue Jays were approaching $800 million, something crazy like that. So there's still lots of questions to be answered. And it sounds like every team except for the Dodgers basically is deeply in the mix. And it's just going to come down to where Soto wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Nightingale just tweeted. I know he wrote this morning, but he did, just put it in a tweet and said, the Mets, Yankees, Blue Jays, and Red Sox are all in the $700 million neighborhood, which is pretty crazy considering where things have gone. I mean, Aaron Judge signed like a record-setting $360 million contract just 2 off seasons ago, and now we're looking at a guy pushing past 700, pushing, I think it was John Heyman last night. He wrote that the Mets and Yankees are in the 710 to $730 million range. it's insane, like just the way that this has gone. And I do wonder, like if Juan Soto and Scott Boras were like, yeah, we'll have every team's best offer by Sunday at the latest, but if they're kind of sitting there and they're like, oh, these guys are willing to go way higher than 600, than 700. Like they're willing to go to 750, 800. Then we're just going to keep sitting here as they kind of battle it out for who's going to give us the top dollar. And that's ultimately where Juan Soto will end up.
Is there a universe that Juan Soto sniffs $1 billion?
I think the only universe where that happens is if he signs with the Blue Jays because that
It's in
750
Canadian.
million dollars is USD converts to a billion Canadian. But hey,
Oh.
man, he could be the first ever professional, or not the first ever professional sports billionaire, but it would be, however you want to look at it, like the first $1 billion contract, I guess.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I feel like $800 million might be in reach. Like maybe I'm getting greedy if I'm Juan Soto, but
I
like
mean,
if
like,
these
why,
guys
like,
all if they all blew past 700 million, surely you could continue to weed them out.
what do you think that the valuations say for all these teams? Because I'm really curious about like looking at it. I think it probably ends up being a 15-year deal, so you probably lock him up for however long that is. And I believe it was written that there are going to be opt-outs in the contract. So like maybe you're not getting him for 15 years, but if you're going to go to $800 million, like it kind of seems like Juan Soto is a really good baseball player and is going to be a Hall of Famer and an all-time player. But is 800 million, like that's got to be surpassing what the on-field value will almost surely be.
For sure, but it's I want to say it was Dave Dombrowski where he basically had this quote from a number of years ago. If you're going to be rational about every free agent, you're going to finish second on every free agent.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's guys that you can maybe, you know, stepping on a landmine here, stepping on a landmine there. You're not stepping on a landmine with Juan Soto. If you overpay Juan Soto, you're overpaying for the second, third, fourth best player in Major League Baseball. There's a lot worse guys you could be overpaying than a top five player in baseball. And yeah, his age 36 season is probably going to be a catastrophe. He's probably going to be a designated hitter that puts up like 3 wins above replacement, and you're probably deep in a rebuild at that point if he's even on your team because he'll have a dozen opt-outs in between every single offseason. But if I'm on Soto, like this is great for me. I'm gonna cash in, and if I'm a team, it's great for me because I just got Juan Soto. Like there's no losers in this situation.
Yeah, I mean Juan Soto was a pretty freaking cool baseball player. Just looking at, Fangraphs um dollar or war to dollar calculator, like he was worth $65 million last season for the Yankees. And obviously it was probably the best season of his career. I mean, he had a 8-win season. He had a 180 WRC plus. Like I think the only time that he's been better was in 2020 when he, almost reached base at a 500 clip in the shortened season. But like I mean, he's 26. He's so young, and that's obviously kind of where the extra value, I guess, kind of comes from with this deal, where Shohei Ohtani was obviously in his 30s. But when you look at it, it is a really unique opportunity to get a guy this young into your organization and get him there for however long that you can. And if he's going to be putting up $65 million seasons, then I think you're going to be pretty happy with what the front end of that contract looks like, no matter how much you do pay him.
Yeah, like if this was a 10-year deal, he's probably getting 400, 450 million. The reason it's reaching these astronomical levels is because he's younger than the AL Rookie of the Year winner. Like that's the exact reason. It's tacking on those extra 5, 6 years. Juan Soto is younger than Adley Rutschman. This is a guy that is basically and 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 you could argue he's entering his prime, right? Like, listen, we know aging curves now a lot better than we used to, and there's a better understanding that he's probably about where his peak is. But also, like the conception of your prime maybe 15 years ago was like 27 to 33. And this guy is still younger than that. You are getting a guy that is one of the top three, maybe top five players in baseball for his entire career, basically. And that's what you're paying for,
Yeah, I think Sportsnet Ben Nicholson Smith says like you're buying a Hall of Fame plaque with this contract.
pretty much.
And, like, I mean, you can't really argue that there's not going to be a heck of a player added to your lineup. And, I think I've seen, some people that are like, all right, like how much is too much money? And, obviously I think probably once you start getting past like the 800s and the 900s, like it is pretty ridiculous when you get to that point. But I mean, again, like obviously Shohei was a very, very unique case, but the age and the talent level on Juan Soto and I think that like the Shohei marketability thing was something that we talked about as to why a team is willing to go to $700 million to get him and being able to give him a record contract and like but like Juan Soto is pretty marketable as well. Like he is a very cool baseball player. He's very fun to watch. Obviously he has the shuffle. He kind of has like this swag about him. Like I think for the Yankees last year, like Aaron Judge was the unanimous MVP, but Juan Soto was the focus of that team.
He was the story of that team for sure. I mean, the team went from a what 82 win, 83 something win team to a World Series finalist. It's you know, it's not Shohei Ohtani levels of marketable because nobody is Shohei Ohtani levels of marketable. That guy is approaching, soccer, Messi and Ronaldo levels of fame. But Juan Soto is a figure unto himself. He's an incredible stature in Major League Baseball. And again, the thing that makes him so compelling is that he's so young.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll see where it goes. I don't want to, go way too much deeper into this because there is a chance that, of course he does sign today and all this conversation is kind of moot for us. But yeah, like I mean it was pretty fun, I feel like at the beginning as, everything kind of unfolded, but now at the point I'm very ready for him to kind of make an announcement and to kind of get it over just based on the way that, Twitter has unfolded around this. It's kind of ridiculous when you log on and you see everybody either pretending they have sources or everybody with sources trying to, make themselves more important than they are, or, trying to gain followers with cryptic tweets and all this stuff, right? Like I mean it really gives you an appreciation for people like Jeff Passan and what they do in terms of just not being terminally online and trying to get ahead of a story when there maybe isn't one.
Yeah. The only guy that I'm watching is Jeff Passan, and to a lesser extent, everyone's favorite crash out candidate John Heyman. But
I can't believe it.
but anyways, yeah, it's decisions coming down, but not clear yet exactly when. And until then, keep your eyes peeled.
Yes, we'll be watching, that's for sure. Let's move on because there have been some moves in recent days, and I think they are fairly relevant to the Blue Jays, and obviously Tyler O'Neill is relevant to the Canadian audience, being from north of the border. And Tyler O'Neill signs with the Orioles, Willie Adames signs with the Giants, Clay Holmes signs with the Mets, Luis Severino signs with the A's. All four of those guys are players that have been linked to the Blue Jays this offseason. I'm not 100% sure, how much interest or how much conversation was had with Willie Adames, but we do know for a fact that the Blue Jays were in on Luis Severino and that they were in on Clay Holmes. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts because I know you're a Tyler O'Neill believer, having added him to your Blue Jays team in the past two off seasons. What was
I'm
it
gonna have to
like?
find someone new
Yeah.
next year.
Well, it might be him. He's got the opt out after the first year of the deal, so he could enter the market again. But I mean, as these guys kind of come off, are you a little bit worried that the Juan Soto-ness of this offseason is preventing the Blue Jays from moving on any other markets?
I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge it at least a little bit. I mean, you think of last year and how they got hold in the bag with Otani, and because of that, they ended up pivoting to Kevin Kiermaier and Justin Turner and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So you got to figure that the Blue Jays were maybe in the mix for Tyler O'Neill, but I can't imagine there was any serious commitment. And I'm sure after that first year opt out, it kind of became done and dusted as far as the Tyler O'Neill stuff goes. And it's unfortunate to again see him go to an AL East team that isn't the Blue Jays. As far as the rest of the guys go, I mean, obviously Clay Holmes would have been compelling, but I don't think he's starting for this Blue Jays team. They just have kind of they don't really have a glut per se of pitchers, but they certainly have a glut of middle of the rotation type pitchers. And I don't know that Clay Holmes would have really moved the needle that much there. And then, you know, the Dames, it's maybe he would have played some third base for you, but if you're committing to him as your third baseman, then what does that mean for the rest of your offseason? How much of a priority is third base when you've already got so many infielders as it is already? So, back to O'Neill, I would have liked to get him. I think that he probably gets paid a lot, and I think that opt out as well really shifts the dynamic of that contract. So, it is what it is. I think it's unfortunate that the Blue Jays again are missing out on some big power bats they should have been in on. Now, there's some available still, obviously, with Santander and Teoscar Hernandez, but the clock is certainly ticking to a much higher degree than it was about 48 hours ago.
Yeah, I think Chris Cotillo reported earlier today that it seems like the Red Sox are pretty interested in Teoscar Hernandez, but it seems like the writing's on the wall that if Juan Soto does in fact not choose the Dodgers, that Teo will be returning to LA just based on, multiple reports that his interest is there and the Dodgers are interested there, and he's a really good fit for that park and that lineup and everything. So, it is tough when you miss out on like a Tyler O'Neill, who I was a little bit surprised to see that he signed before Juan Soto, because I feel like, as far as like the trickle down goes, especially and Adames too, right? Like I think that those guys are really interesting, like as far as plan Bs or pivot points. I thought that they would have both been, good for teams who miss out on Soto to go after.
I agree with that to an extent, but I also think that especially in the Adamas situation, like the Giants aren't in on him, but who's ponying up? What was it? It was 180 or something, wasn't it? Something like that. Like I don't think anyone's ponying up that kind of cash for Willie Adamas unless you are the Giants, who are desperate to find a shortstop to succeed. Basically, Brandon Crawford, who wasn't there last year, hasn't been Brandon Crawford since about 2021. They had Fitzgerald in there for a while. He obviously was fine, offensively, defensively, wasn't really a shortstop. Like they had a huge hole there, and they were the team that was willing to overpay him. I don't know who else necessarily was going to be in that, especially for the Blue Jays. You're looking at him as a third baseman. I don't think that they're going to overpay him as a third baseman.
Yeah, I agree with the Adamas thing for sure. One thing I saw that I thought was pretty funny was that it was, you look at the Adamas contract, and it's was a leverage play for, so some people were saying a leverage play for Soto as well. Just because they're like, oh, you wanna have this backup plan? Well, there goes your backup plan. Now you got to pay Soto more or
Is he
whatever.
is he also a Boris guy?
I saw somebody say that, but I'm not 100% sure if he is. Let me see here.
Could you imagine being such a like a Major League Baseball puppet that you could be like, nope, just you're not. I'm controlling the supply
Okay,
to such a
Adamas is with
degree.
CAA Sports, so that is a false accusation that somebody
you've
placed
been
there.
you've been misinformed. You've been disinformation.
There's
That's
been a
why.
lot of
That's
that. There's
why
been a lot of that
there's
going
been so
around.
much of that. Oh man.
All right. Let's talk about like some of the guys that, obviously are still available. I believe it was John Morosi that reported earlier this week that the Blue Jays met in person with Corbin Burns, which is fun. And Francis Romero reported that the Blue Jays are among the top suitors for third baseman Yoan Moncada. One of those is very much more intriguing than the other. So we can start with Corbin Burns. What are your thoughts on Burns? Like, I mean, I again, like, I obviously top free agent pitcher available on the market, probably going to get more than 200 million. Like, would you be happy with Corbin Burns signing?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not be. It would be a huge addition to the rotation, and it matches a lot of what we heard about a month ago, where the Blue Jays were reported to be really interested in some starting pitching, particularly a guy like a Max Fried. So, makes sense, understandable why that is the case, and would be an exciting ad. Doesn't really address your problem with with your bats. But if the Blue Jays are intent on winning every single game 1-0, then I suppose Corbin Burns would be a nice addition to any rotation, really. But I don't know. I'm not sure how much I not necessarily buy it per se, because obviously it's something that we've heard repeatedly is that they're going to be in the mix. But I just don't know. Is Corbin Burns a guy that the Blue Jays are going to have that special pot for? It sounds like maybe they will. Maybe it's him and Fried and Soto, and maybe it was Snell. But I don't know if that's a guy that I'm 100% certain they're going to have this mystery pot of cash for.
Yeah, to me, I think the more likely, and this is obviously not sourced. This is like just the way that I feel about it. That I feel that Freed is more likely to be a Blue Jay than Burns, just kind of based on the price point and their profile a little bit. Obviously, Burns is gonna make a lot of money, and I think he is going to be a very hot commodity once Soto signs for, like if Soto returns to the Yankees, or the Mets are gonna need. They're going to need some lineup help. They still need pitching. Obviously, they add Frankie Montas and they add Clay Holmes to their rotation, but you know, for a team that had like Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, like I mean, right now they're looking at a David Peterson, Kodai Senga, Frankie Montas, and
Clay
Clay
Holmes.
Holmes rotation, which to me is like that's not necessarily a postseason caliber group there. So you still kind of need the guy to put the headline on that, and obviously Burns would be a very interesting member of that if they do miss out on Soto. So I think Burns the bidding there will get interesting, and obviously Fried has a ton of interest as well. It seems like, Boston's in, the Yankees are in. I think there was somebody that reported that he's going to come down to the Red Sox and Yankees, but I think the Blue Jays would just be a really, really, really nice fit for Fried, and they'd be very smart to try and add him to
For
the
sure.
team.
Lefty too, and the Blue Jays
Yeah.
don't really have that as well in their rotation. So there's some sensible stuff there. And again, there's the whole notion that you pick up a Fried, you pick up a Burns, and it kicks a guy like a Yariel Rodriguez to the bullpen and upgrades your bullpen at the same time too,
Yeah.
which the Blue Jays clearly need to upgrade as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think the bullpen stuff is interesting because there's going to be so many ways to go about that, and we kind of know, I think, that they're not going to spend a ton of money on relievers because it's just not what they do outside of Chad Green. But yeah, I think the starting rotation would be a very nice way to kind of address that, and
Can
obviously
I can I
Freed.
toss some slop at a wall here for you?
Are you just going to throw reliever names at me?
No, well, a little bit. Well, no, Jeff Hoffman. I wonder if because there's been so much talk about him playing as a starter, and he's a guy that it feels like would make sense to invest in as a starter, and then also worst case scenario turn him into a reliever. Which and you're looking for help on the bullpen side. You either slot him into the rotation and you turn I don't know, Yari Rodriguez into a bullpen arm, or you've just added a high leverage bullpen arm and maybe slightly overpaid. That's what I wonder.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously Yariel is kind of like that piece where you're looking at, can he be a starter, can he be a reliever? Like, do you need, like, if you have both Yariel and a Jeff Hoffman and say that both of them end up being guys that need to live in the bullpen, like obviously that helps out your bullpen, but then you're, kind of maybe lacking on the starting pitching side. But of course, there's Jake Bloss, there's Alek Manoah, who should be returning like mid-season, and obviously Bloss, you hope would be major league ready some point this year for sure. Um, So maybe, like, I mean, Hoffman obviously is very good, and if you kind of look into it, it seems like his pitch mix would play fairly well as a starter, and he would, you know, obviously his numbers would not be as good as they were as a reliever, but he would be like a solid dude to the add to the to add to the rotation. So I don't think I would necessarily mind a Jeff Hoffman signing. I just don't know if the Blue Jays having Yariel already being that type of guy, if they would want a little bit more certainty from a starting rotation ad.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. I don't know. Maybe if Alex Anthopoulos was still the GM, maybe he'd be like, "Hey, 2014, I liked you then. I'll pluck you right now." But I don't know. I guess we'll see.
AA always gets his guys.
Exactly right. I hear
Um,
Kevin Pillar's looking for a job again.
they're gonna need somebody to play center field while Dalton Varsho returns from injury to start the year.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, Yohan Moncada. Immediate thoughts.
400 Babbitt Moncada, please save me. 400 Babbitt Moncada, please save me. 400 Babbitt Moncada, please save me. Yeah, this guy is apparently been linked to the Blue Jays. I don't exactly know where he fits on this baseball team because I don't think he's better than Ernie Clement or any of the million second basemen the Blue Jays have. And I would imagine he's not a 400 Babbitt guy because nobody's a 400 Babbitt guy. So sure, I guess as a minor league signing, sure, but beyond that, it would be Isaiah kind of Falefa all over again.
So I just mentioned that the Blue Jays would like more certainty in their starting rotation. Um, I feel like this front office is a fairly high floor team. Like they like to add guys, with that certainty. And I don't know if there is any player in Major League Baseball with less certainty as to what they are than Yohan Moncada.
Even as
Um,
a major leaguer, right? Like he's
yeah.
been the highs of like a 5-6 WAR, number one prospect level, amazing guy, and then he's been unplayably bad.
So let me read you his stats. So these are since 2022, so his last three seasons. He has played in 208 games, hit 23 home runs with a 236, 291, 387 slash line, which is good for an 88 WRC plus and 2.2 F WAR.
This guy is literally Isaiah Kiner Falefa, man. I
But
mean, the
worse
bat to ball
defensively.
skill, yeah, the bat to ball skills aren't there, and he's not a Gold Glove defender. But this guy. This sounds a lot like Isaiah. It's a guy that didn't play that much beforehand, and I mean, I guess like he doesn't really have the bat to ball skills of Isaiah Kiner Falefa. So like he's not Isaiah Kiner Falefa.
Yeah, I just like, I mean, I think you're right that he is not better than Ernie Clement. And you're like, I get it. I understand. Like he would be, it's obviously we're hating a lot on like what would be a very cheap signing for a
For
dude
sure.
that has like the upside of being. I don't know if he has the upside of being an all-star. Like he's 29 at this point, and he never was an all-star even in that 2019 where he was a near six-win player. Like I
Are
just
you are you looking for like the next Jerks and Profar? Is that what this is? Because it doesn't make any
Maybe,
sense to
yeah.
me.
I guess like maybe you kind of look at the top prospect pedigree and the fact that he's been stuck in Chicago for a while, and maybe you think you can get a little bit more out of him. Like, I mean, I understand. Like, if they sign him, I'm not gonna, completely dump on the contract. But the fact that we're at this point in the offseason where they are like they're doing the Juan Soto thing, and guys are coming off the board, and the report that you're getting is that they're in the like one of the top teams in on Yohan Moncada is
Concerning.
concerning. Yes. Obviously, you know what? Like, I mean, the Burns meeting is great and all. I just, the Moncada thing to me is yeah, it's interesting. And obviously the fan base is at a point where Yohan Moncada is just not gonna cut it, to be honest. Like Yohan Moncada has got to be like the fifth dude they bring in this offseason if they
Yeah,
if
this
they
is
want to
this is
kind of
not.
generate some excitement.
It's not who you're looking for. It's not who you're looking for the Blue Jays.
Yeah. It's it's a dude. It's a dude that you could bring in to wear the Blue Jays uniform. All right. Well, that is kind of all the recent news around the Blue Jays. And of course, as things get kicked off tomorrow at the winter meetings, there are a handful of events as, the baseball world converges there. And we're going to get into a couple of them when we come back after this short break.
This episode is sponsored by BioSteel. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca and use promo code Bird's Eye View Podcast at checkout to get 20% off your order. Fuel your performance with BioSteel today. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
All right, welcome back. We are going to keep going on this winter meetings primer. As far as the schedule in Dallas, what it looks like on Monday, it seems like there are manager meetings or manager press conferences. So we'll probably get some interesting quotes, probably some non-answers around a Juan Soto pursuit, whether he signs or not. I'm sure that'll be a question that is asked of John Schneider and what that process looked like. And then on Tuesday, we get the draft lottery where the Blue Jays have the seventh best odds at the number one pick, which is pretty exciting, I think, if you are a draft fan and excited about that.
I'm excited for Ethan Holiday. I think we went over this last episode. um, I mean, the Major League Baseball draft, obviously, it's a ways off. It's in July, but this is a big potential lottery for the Blue Jays, given the dearth of options in their minor league system. They need a guy, and they specifically need a guy in case you're looking at Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero Jr. walking at the end of the year. And if you have any intentions of continuing your competitive window, they need to use this pick on a guy that's going to be competitive for them, that's going to be successful for them. And obviously, that goes without saying, but this is a really, really important draft, I think, especially because of where they are at their current window.
Sorry, I said they have the seventh best odds, but they actually have the fifth best odds. So
Fifth best
even
odds.
even better,
Even
even
better.
better. But
Yeah, well, because of the A's and the White
yeah,
Sox. Yes, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, like you're totally right. Obviously, the farm system kind of needs those headliners, and I think Arjun Nimala has kind of given them that, and Trey Savage, you hope can kind of be like a top 100-ish guy. Obviously Ricky Tiedemann and Relvis Martinez are still in the organization, but of course both had disappointing developments, we'll say, in 2024. So, I think they have a chance to really get a big win this year in the draft. And obviously if they get the number one pick, like that's as big a win as you can ask for. And the top of the draft is pretty loaded. I mean, obviously Ethan Holiday is very exciting. Jace Laviolette is the dude that I am gonna be enthralled by until he gets drafted. I think he's probably in the Wyatt Langford mold of a dude that comes from the SEC and can maybe make an impact like the year after he gets drafted kind of thing. So, like, I mean, to me, I think there's a really interesting scenario for the Blue Jays where they extend Vlad, their window extends a little bit. You take a guy like Jace Laviolette and he turns around and is helping you in 2026. And I think that would be super fun. Obviously, Ethan Holiday is a little bit more of the long-term play. And I don't think that that's something that you look at and you're like, well, if we're good, we're going to take this guy. And if we're bad, we're going to take this guy because you just want to take the best player available. Especially when you're picking in the top 10. But yeah, going to be really interesting to see where they end up in the draft and what prospects kind of emerge and who they can end up grabbing there.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys obviously that are really talented at the top of the draft. I don't have the names offhand, but again, as I mentioned, the way that the Major League Baseball draft obviously works is that there's about a million guys and you're really just chucking a lot of darts. But I do feel like, again, as I mentioned, that this is really a really important draft. And I also wonder, if you're the Blue Jays, do, do you do you think about maybe like is this an opportunity to hard reset? If you don't get Soto, if you maybe do win the draft lottery, does that change the trajectory of the team on the whole for this upcoming season? They've talked all of this stuff about wanting to continue to be competitive, but if you win the draft lottery and you start April under 500, you know that you're going to have this one, crown jewel, and you're going to have a couple of really nice trading pieces. I wonder if it impacts the way they think about the team going into April and even into May.
I think it depends on what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. tells them. I think if he comes out and he's, ready to sign an extension and, it seems like it has been very, very quiet on that front. And obviously you think having him locked up would help your Juan Soto negotiations. So, maybe Vlad tells you, I'm gonna hit free agency. So maybe that doesn't motivate you at all to really, do a whole lot else around them, especially if you win the draft lottery. And maybe that does push them in the direction of, yeah, we're ready to reset. Um, but I think if Vlad tells you that he's going to sign and he's going to stay, that kind of pushes you in the direction of, yeah, we're going to try and compete while we have this superstar first baseman locked up, this face of the franchise, and you're going to hopefully be adding like another major talent to him in the coming years based on who you draft here.
All right, should we have some fun? Should we pull out Tankathon? Should we do an official bird's eye view Tankathon? What pick will the blue? Because we're not going to be talking until they've the draft lotteries happen. So should we give it a run here?
I do have
And
it up. You want me to do it? I'll
all
see if
right, all
I
right, let's
can.
go. Is
I'm going to
this
share
is
the
this
screen.
share the screen? All right, here we go. The bird's eye view official Tankathon
All right, here we go.
draft
Here we
lottery.
go.
Is this it?
Well, that
It's
sucks.
That's like the worst
That's
case
tough.
scenario. The
That's
Pirates win the
unfortunate.
draft lottery. The Blue Jays drop all the way to 7. I hope that's not what happens.
Better luck. Hopefully the Blue Jays will have a little bit more, a
uh,
little bit. You know what? At least I think, the least you can ask for is that they at least stay in the top five because the top
that would
five
be
pick
that
is
would
is
be
is
that
pretty
would be hopeful.
exciting.
That would hopefully be what happens. If this is what happens, it wouldn't be probably the worst case scenario.
Um, One other thing that we haven't discussed on the pod is that Baseball America released their top 10 Blue Jays prospects, and we don't want to go through the entire list because there's a lot of guys, but basically the rundown is Ricky Tiedemann number one, Trey Savage number two, Arjun Namala number three, Arelis Martinez four, Jake Bloss five, Josh Kasevich six, Landon Marotta seven, Alan Roden eight, Kendry Rojas nine, and Fernando Perez 10. Um, Obviously, I think that we do a little bit more prospect watching and talking than the general fan might, and it kind of lends you to have some more opinions and maybe be a little bit more pro some of these guys. But I mean, what were your thoughts seeing the list, and were there any surprises to you?
I think the biggest surprise, probably for me, I'd say Alan Roden being eighth, I think was kind of low. It felt, and Ricky being number one still after
Yeah.
obviously losing the season and probably losing next season or a vast majority of it, and still being the Jays' number one prospect. And I don't know if that speaks to Tiedemann's upside, which if he becomes everything that you hope he does, then he's a top of the rotation lefty, or if it speaks to a lack of talent at the top of the Blue Jays farm system. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, I think obviously Tiedemann is a very tantalizing pitcher and a guy that you are very excited to watch pitch, and you can kind of see what he can be. He's got like that Chris Sale mold, but he's got to figure out a way to stay on the field, and I think until he you know either doesn't do that once he comes back or really really succeeds when he comes back, I think this is kind of where we're going to see him is atop the list, and he's kind of going to be a little bit of a mystery box. And I think you're right, with him being number one and Morotis being number seven, both of whom had their seasons cut short with elbow surgery. Arelis Martinez sticking at number four as well, obviously the different scenario with the PED suspension for him. But I think it was interesting that Baseball America kind of made the decision to keep all of these guys so high when they did have what amounted to lost 2024s.
Yeah, that to me, again, I just don't know if that's just a lack of guys that broke out. It seems like maybe that's it, but also, a lot of these guys have so much tantalizing talent that it's kind of like, if Tiedemann turns this year into a speed bump instead of a roadblock,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like nothing happened, and he's a incredible talent again. So it seems like he's a guy that Baseball America at least still really believes in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think obviously, what that group, like whoever they draft in next June is going to immediately be the top prospect in the system. I'm fairly certain that is going to be the outcome there. But like I mean, I think Arjun and Savage are both very intriguing and are guys. Savage probably is a guy that you really want to have a handful of success next year, so he can be in the conversation in 2026. And like I mean, I mentioned if they draft like a Jace Laviolette, you see that 2026 roster, you got a Savage, you got a guy like that kind of pushing up to be on the major league roster. And I think that's probably around the arrival time for a lot of these guys, right? Like, I mean, I think a Relvis, you probably look at him being more of a piece in 2025. But in 2026, like that's kind of when you want to see a guy like that hitting his stride. The same goes for like a Jake Bloss and an Alan Roden for sure. So you know what I like? I mean, I think there's some decent positive momentum amongst those guys, even if they aren't going to be, MVP candidates and all-stars. Like, I mean, that's a pretty decent top 10 of guys who you at least can envision being contributors in the next few years.
Yeah, you would hope that, a handful of those guys, maybe not all of them, but certainly you hope the majority of them turn into major league pieces. But it's I mean, especially with a lot of those young pitchers, right? It's kind of a bit
Yeah.
of a dart throw,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of thinking maybe one of these guys turns into a piece. But I do think that the depth in the system is at a much better place than it was, but they really,
Yeah.
really, 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 really
I
need
I
this next draft pick to go well.
I think that's kind of where the farm system is at, right? Like I mean, like the depth is fairly good. Like I think they have a decent base of like depth and like they have a good handful of like relievers with decent stuff. They've got some outfielders who are developing. They've got obviously Arjun, but it's just kind of like the crown jewel pieces that they're missing, and that's what the opportunity this draft lottery presents. And obviously, there is always going to be a significant difference between like the number one pick and the number eight pick. So it is really important and that you want to do well in that draft lottery. So you're in the Ethan Holiday, Laviolette, Camp Cannarella conversation rather than like the Brady Ebel and kind of some of these other guys who are a little bit
Yeah,
lower.
needless to say, Tuesday will be a very important day for the Blue Jays moving forward.
Yes. Perhaps a less important day, but still an intriguing one nonetheless, is going to be Wednesday, when the Blue Jays have the seventh pick in the Rule 5 draft. The Blue Jays have not been active in the Rule 5 for a few years, and it's kind of exciting that they're in this spot. It seems like a pretty good position for them to maybe grab a reliever and maybe try someone out that way. I think it would be kind of fun to take somebody there and give it a shot. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any names offhand. Again, it's the Rule 5 draft. I'm not super engrossed in terms of who they might take, but I think in terms of concepts, in terms of what they need to be looking for, I think bullpen specifically, given that they have a lot of guys they don't have answers for, it seems like an opportunity to go out and get a guy. I mean, you mentioned it before we hit the record button. Justin Slayton was a Rule 5 pick of the Red Sox
He was
last
the
year. And
seventh pick in last year's Rule 5
exactly. And
draft.
that's not to say that you're necessarily going to find yourself a high leverage reliever in the draft. I mean, everyone loves to remember Joe Biagini and the success story that he was. But you're going to have guys there that are going to be options that are going to be compelling, and you would suspect that you're going to be able to snag somebody that you think can contribute to your team next year. Now, of course, the Blue Jays not making any moves. There's a threat of losing some guys as well. I mean, Lazaro Estrada, excuse me, obviously I think is the name that a lot of people are concerned about. MLB Pipeline mentioned Desan Brown, and there's been talk that he's always going to be ahead of where he looks with the bat because of how good his glove is. So the Blue Jays might be ripe for picking as well, but they're also in a position to kind of be on the offensive a little bit too.
Yeah, I think obviously what they made a statement by not protecting anybody, and it kind of tells you what they thought about all of those guys. I think it's pretty likely that they don't have anybody selected from them. Obviously, what like Estrada is one of those guys. I think Jonathan Lavallee is interesting. I believe Hayden Younger is a name that's been thrown out there by Baseball America, but yeah, I don't think I would be overly concerned about losing any of these guys because all of the Blue Jays Rule 5 eligible players are either don't have enough time at the high minors to justify being selected, or in the high minors haven't really been quite good enough.
Yeah, which is basically the summation of this Blue Jays farm system at the moment, right? So it's kind of like it imitates, it mirrors, and of course it does because that's where they are right now in terms of their competitive window.
Yeah. Interesting, before we hit record, I was kind of like, yeah, I wonder if they would, be interested in like taking a lefty bullpen because, as we know, their 40 man is lacking for left-handed options after, letting Genesis Cabrera go and, Tim Meza obviously before that. So right now it's Brendan Little, Brandon Isert, like these are the types of guys that they have, as left-handed options out of their bullpen. I think when you look at it, there aren't a ton of super exciting left-handers quite necessarily available in the Rule 5 right now, but I would be interested to see. I just like doing some really quick research. Like there's a guy in the Brewer system named Russell Smith who's 6'7" and kind of has the invisible fastball, which is crazy for a guy like who's so tall. Except for he doesn't throw very hard, so it's not, it's like a 90 mile per hour fastball, but he's 6'7", so it's probably, can you imagine being in the box like a 6'7" guy coming from way up here and
Everything's a
and
change
and
up. Just
and it's
everything's a
just you're
change up.
just you're just geared up and you can't wait for it. But yeah, a guy like that would be interesting. I'm sure that there's, we'll definitely kind of see how it goes, but interested to see if they do kind of bite because they do have a high pick, so it would be fun if they did do that.
Yeah, would suspect that they'll be sniffing around. But again, I don't really know exactly what they're gonna do. I don't know again because this front office has shown something of an aversion almost to the Rule 5 draft. It's just kind of like, what will they do? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I know both you and I are fairly intrigued by the Rule 5 draft and kind of locked in there. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I always love to see how these guys do, and it's maybe not the most profitable way to acquire players these days. I think, Justin Slayton is obviously very good, but you look at like the last year, a guy like Ryan Noda was so good, and then this year he got sent down because he wasn't very good. So there's a reason that they're not protected, and there are warts about them, but still very fun to dive into and see who's available.
Yeah, love to see these guys. I think it's just fun to kind of, I had a feeling, I had a hunch,
Yes,
I think that's the
yes,
fun part.
yes, 100%, 100% to do a little bit of stat line scouting, a little bit of video review, and kind of plant your flag on some guys. Very exciting.
Exactly that.
All right, well, Jory, we did it. We made it through the episode without a Juan Soto signing breaking. So let's go for the day, and hopefully it doesn't come down anytime post recording for us here.
Oh man. I guess we'll see.
We will see indeed. Hopefully, you all enjoy the winter meetings and all the speculation and all the rumors and all the transactions this week. It is going to be a very fun week for the baseball world. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Pod. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jory is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening.